Welcome to the Mulcahy Law Firm podcast. For over 25 years, Mulcahy Law Firm has helped plan communities and condominium associations throughout the state of Arizona. Please go to iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a rating and a review. Thank you for listening. Here's Beth Mulcahy.
Hi, everybody. Good morning and welcome to our Neighborhood Services Virtual HOA Academy for February. Today is February 20th, 2024, and we're going to be talking about annual meetings and regular board meetings today. We're going to cover everything from A to Z on your regular monthly board meeting and tips on also how to run a successful and a productive annual meeting. Do you need suggestions on how to increase attendance at your annual meeting? We've got them for you here today. Good morning and welcome to class number 2 of our firm's 2024 Virtual HOA Academy, in partnership with the cities of Avondale, Chandler, Glendale, Goodyear, Mesa, Peoria, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Surprise, and Tempe. My name is Beth Mulcahy, and I'm going to be your instructor today. I'm the managing partner and senior attorney for the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona. I've enjoyed representing HOAs and condominiums for the past 27 years. My firm currently represents over 1,000 planned communities and condominium associations throughout the state of Arizona. I also currently serve on my HOA board, and I have for many years. Before we get started, I always like to get a feel for who's listening in today. It looks like, oh my goodness, we have a lot of people here today, 121 right now, just on Zoom. And I know that we're having a little bit of difficulty on Facebook Live this morning. Hopefully we're getting that technicality fixed up quickly. Let's get a feel for who's here today by launching our poll. The first question we have is, which city do you reside in? This would be the city where the HOA or condominium is that you are related to somehow. We list all the different cities in the valley. And then the second question is, what is your current role with the association? So are you a board member? Are you a community manager who's a management company, or a manager within a management company, or an interested homeowner or other? So while you're finishing up answering those polls, we're going to do just a quick overview of what's on today's agenda. So we're going to start out today by talking a little bit about the pending legislation. As you know, our legislature has been in session now in Arizona for about a month and a half. And our firm is closely watching all the bills that have been introduced this year in the Arizona legislature. There were a lot of bills this year, more so than normal. But there were also a lot of duplicative bills, meaning that a lot of the bills were similar in nature on the same change topic. Then we're going to move over and talk a little bit about how to run your regular board meeting, your monthly board meeting or your quarterly board meeting in compliance with Arizona law, how to have it so it's conflict-free, how to comply with the law so that you make sure that you're following the open meeting law, and really any issues that could come up with the regular board meeting or your association's board. Then we're going to switch over and talk about the annual meeting, which is your one time each year to shine as a board and show, all of the successes that you've had in the past year and challenges, and also to forge ahead with what are the future plans for your association. So we're going to talk a little bit about the legalities of the annual meeting, and then we're also going to give you some tips on how to have a successful annual meeting and how to recruit new board members so that there's good succession planning for your association. And as always, at the end of this class, there's going to be a free question and answer period where we will answer every question that you submit to us today. We encourage you to submit your questions via the Q&A box on Zoom or the comments section on Facebook Live. And we will answer all of your legal questions during this session. I know that we're having a little bit of difficulty with Facebook Live this morning due to an update, so I'm not sure if those viewers have joined us yet, but if they are just joining us, welcome. We apologize for any delays. It wasn't our fault. It was just an update that was going on with Zoom and Facebook Live. Okay, don't forget, when you submit your questions today, please only submit one question per person and be specific in your question, as it's really difficult for me to follow up and ask clarifying questions if I don't understand your question. So try to be as specific as possible so that I can be sure to answer your question today. Okay, let's just do a quick little update on what's going on in the legislature. The legislature in Arizona has been in session for about a month and a half. Like I said, there have been a lot of bills introduced this year, more so than other years. 29 bills, in fact, pertaining to HOAs and condos. And they really kind of touch on a variety of different topics, including assessments, meetings, records requests, short-term rentals, associations powers, flags again, like last year, liens, and elections. There are only 6 out of the 29, however, that have moved into committees. The ones that have progressed are Senate Bill 1016 on flagpoles, House Bill 2119 on HOA fees and related parties, House Bill 2141 on condominiums interior improvements, House Bill 2470 on planned communities, public roadways, which is like an absolute reversal of the bill that we saw last year, which is just so interesting. And then House Bill 2662, meeting agendas. And last but not least, House Bill 2698, which talks about declarant control. There are 23 of the 29 bills that have been introduced this year that have not gone anywhere. So they haven't moved into committees, or they haven't moved out of the committees. We're still going to watch these bills, but it's not likely that they're going to move this year. It's unlikely, in my opinion. So we have a great summary that we post every week while the legislature is in session. And if you want to do a deep dive on those 6 bills that I talked about earlier, now is the time to take a look at our website or click on the link, or you can do that later too, and get the skinny on what's going on with those 6 bills. But remember, these bills are not the law yet. And, once the legislative session ends in late spring or early summer, we will be talking extensively about which bills pass this year and how they may impact you and your association. So stay tuned. Remember, during the legislative session, you can always go to the homepage of our website too and look at the summary, the up-to-date summary of what's going on with the bills in the legislature if you want the up-to-the-week summary. And then again, at the end of the legislative session, we'll do a cheat sheet that identifies all the changes in the law and the effective date. Okay, let's switch back and talk about our poll results. So we had a great turnout today. We have every city is represented here today that, we are teaching the classes for all these different cities in the Valley. So we have 1% from Avondale. We have 8% from Chandler, 6% from Glendale, 7% from Goodyear, 24% from Mesa. That's kind of a big jump. Usually don't have that many from Mesa. So welcome to all the people from Mesa. 5% from Peoria, 18% from Phoenix, 20% from Scottsdale, 8% from Surprise, and 4% for Tempe. Something that we might want to do next month that might be kind of fun is let's see which city has the most. So when we have our Neighborhood Services Virtual HOA Academy next month, let's have a contest and see which city can have the most number of people on this class. So this year, today, Mesa's winning with 24%. So great job. Okay, the next question is, what is your current role? So we have 64% of those of you in attendance here today that are board members. We have 14% that are managers. That's pretty high actually for today. So welcome to all the managers. And 21% that are interested homeowners, with 2% bringing up the caboose with other being 2%. So a large concentration today of board members and homeowners and also managers. So welcome to all of you. Okay, let's talk about board meetings first and shift gears and talk about how to run an effective board meeting and how to comply with Arizona law regarding board meetings. So I think we have 2 cheat sheets that we're going to be sharing with you here today throughout the presentation. The first one is on community association board meetings. And these cheat sheets are really helpful. We're going to be sharing them with you on Zoom and Facebook Live. It's more of a deep dive into the topics that we're going to be discussing today. But if you hear something today and you want to see it in written format, that would be a good place to go. How do we start talking about board meetings? So what is a board meeting first? It's the time either monthly or bi-monthly or quarterly that your board meets and discusses association business pertaining to your association. One of the first things that you're going to want to do is have proper planning for these meetings. The way to set up a board meeting for success is to get ahead and plan for that board meeting. So one way to do that is to have a board packet delivered to all of your board members in advance of the board meeting. So maybe a day or 2 in advance of the meeting, or maybe longer is even better. you have a board packet. It's usually kind of thick, and it'll have last month's meeting minutes. It'll have all the financial information for the association. It will have committee information, management and treasurer's reports, association correspondence that the association may have received from an owner or another person who may have some sort of an interest in your community. And most importantly, will be the meeting agenda. And that should be basically, right at the front of the packet so that we can follow the meeting as we go through it. So let's talk a little bit about 10 days before the board meeting, the manager and the board president will start working on an agenda for that regular board meeting. Properly planning the agenda will provide organization and structure and will shorten the length of your meetings. Remember that the agenda is the backbone of the board packet, and it should include enough detail to help the board members prepare for the meeting and also to allocate the proper time that's needed to attend the meeting. I know I serve on 2 different boards, one master board and then my other sub-association board. And there's nothing more frustrating to me as a board member when I get to the meeting and, maybe hopefully our meeting's an hour, but I look at the agenda and it looks like it's 3 hours worth of work. And maybe I didn't plan or allocate for that much time. Having on the agenda, have the name of the association, what kind of meeting it is, regular board meeting, special board meeting of the board, the date, the start time. The first thing you're going to have on there is going to be establishment of a quorum and then approval of the previous meeting minutes for the last board meeting. You're going to have officer reports, committees reports, and managers reports. Some suggestions on how to move these meetings along quickly would be have benchmark times on the agenda. For example, our meeting is starting at 8:15 a.m. From 8:15 to 8:20, we are going to approve last month's meeting minutes. From 8:20 until 8:25 or 8:30, we're going to have the treasurer give their report. And then from 8:30 to 8:40, the president's going to give the report. And then from 8:40 to 9 o'clock, the manager is going to give the management report. And you block out the times on the agenda and then you stick to them as a board. And guess what? You're going to find out that your meetings are 1 hour or less. It's a very efficient way to stay on topics and to allocate time that you're going to be spending for each subject. And it works. And it obviously creates a shorter meeting, but that starts to have a snowball effect of, not creating burnout for your manager or your board members as they're serving on your board. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what kind of notice we have to give under Arizona law to have a meeting that's in compliance with the law. So under Arizona law, and this is going to be the same thing for condominiums and planned communities, and it's under 33-1804C is the revised statute number for planned communities, or 33-1248C if you're a condominium. So what's the notice requirements under these sections? So under Arizona law, regardless of any provision to the contrary in the association's documents, notice to lot or unit owners of a regular monthly board meeting after declarant control must be provided at least 48 hours in advance of the board meeting. 48 hours in advance, we should have a notice sent to the community. It could be done either by newsletter, email, putting it on your association's website, conspicuous posting, putting up sandwich board signs at your community or on your bulletin board, or any other reasonable means as determined by the board. So it's kind of open-ended how you can give your notice. There's lots of different ways. The key thing is it has to be 48 hours in advance of the meeting. The date, the time, and location of the meeting must be stated in the notice. The notice of board meeting must also state the purpose for which the meeting is being called. And our firm suggests that you also provide with the notice a detailed agenda with the notice of meeting to meet this requirement. You're basically telling the owners, this is what our agenda is for the meeting. If you're interested in attending, please come. A couple little practice pointers. What if you have a true emergency? So if you have an emergency, the 48-hour notice is suspended and you're not required to provide the notice 48 hours in advance. You can just have the meeting as quickly as possible. We're going to be talking about emergency board meetings and how to handle those in a minute, but I just wanted to make that clear up front that if there's an emergency, that notice requirement is suspended under law. Okay, a couple other pointers on your regular board meeting. Make sure you're having the meeting in a business environment. and all meetings of the association must be held within the state of Arizona. We're going to talk about virtual meetings in a minute here, but the way to comply with that is that at least one person would have to be, if you're having a virtual meeting, there would have to be one location where, if somebody wanted to attend per se in Arizona, we could set up a place for them to attend in person, maybe have access to the Zoom meeting or whatever in that conference room. Also conducting the business meeting in a business environment. I have so many stories over the years from representing associations for 27 years. I can think of a couple fun ones that I can just give you as an example right now. One would be one of my clients used to have their meeting at a bar, and they were all drinking, and it was, not a good situation. And I attended the meeting, and I did politely say, hey, this isn't the best place for the meeting, and you shouldn't be drinking during the meetings. And you definitely shouldn't be putting a tab together and charging it to the association. Some other kind of fun ones were at one point we had one of the board members owned a mortuary, and they were having the board meetings at the mortuary. And it was convenient, right? It was free. But it was a lot of owners in the community didn't want to attend because it was in that location. So try to have it in a neutral location. If you have a meeting room at your association, obviously that's the best spot possible. Or libraries have rooms, schools have rooms you can rent, churches have rooms that you can rent. Sometimes the management company has the location, a free room that you can use there. Or a lot of associations, like we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, are doing virtual meetings, and they don't even have to have an actual physical location anymore. Select a location that's going to prevent discord or, that's going to result in people not being happy about the venue. Prohibit smoking and alcohol consumption during the board meetings, and bring a board packet and association documents. If you're a board member, obviously you should be bringing that board packet with you every time you come to the meeting because it was given to you in advance to review. That's your copy, and you should be bringing that to the board meeting too. For the managers, you should have an agenda handy for any residents that attend the meeting if you're doing the meeting in person. And that is a requirement under Arizona law that you have to give everybody who's attending an agenda. If you are having a virtual meeting, just put the agenda right up on the screen. That meets the requirement. You could also put a copy of it in the chat if anybody wants to look at it after you move on and the screen has changed to the financials or whatever you're reviewing for that meeting. Just a couple refreshers just to kind of close out some of the things that we've just been talking about because we've gone through a lot of information. Don't forget to use that agenda. Make it a timed agenda so that the meeting can be conducted in an hour or less. Make sure that you're using the board packet and staying on topic. Don't forget to give notice of the board meetings 48 hours in advance. There's many different ways that you can give notice. And hold the meeting in a professional location, and let's be businesslike in how this meeting is conducted. Okay, we've got a quick update on our Facebook feed. If anybody is trying to join us on Facebook Live today, Zoom and Facebook underwent an update, and our normal way of streaming on Facebook Live is unfortunately not working this morning. We've activated our team that helps us with our videos, and they're working on a resolution. We won't be able to have the Facebook Live video today, or Facebook Live session that we normally have today. We're going to keep going on Zoom, obviously. And we're going to put that video on Facebook ASAP. So if anybody wants to find it on Facebook after this class, you'll be able to find it there. Also, don't forget that anytime we teach a class, within a reasonable period of time, all of the videos of the classes are put on our website. And that would be for any neighborhood services class that we teach. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what are some tips for how to have a productive and successful board meeting. So we've kind of talked about the logistics of, okay, we have to give notice, right? We want to have an agenda for everybody who attends, distribute the board packet and advance the meeting. Let's talk about what exactly the open meeting law says. So under Arizona law, there's a special open meeting law that is just for condos and planned communities, HOAs in Arizona. It's different than the open meeting law that applies to school boards and to city council. We have our very own law that just applies to us. And basically what it says is that anytime a quorum of a board is meeting to discuss association business, it must be an open board meeting. So anytime you have a quorum, so let's say you have a 5-person board, you have 3 board members meeting together and they're discussing something, guess what? That's a board meeting. even if you're doing it outside of your normal regular monthly board meeting, right? This is considered a board meeting under Arizona law. So important, just some things to remember. If you're doing a walkthrough around your property and you have a quorum of board and you're discussing association business, guess what? That's a board meeting. I think it's kind of obvious that we know that if the board's all meeting at the regular time each month and got a quorum there, that's a board meeting. There are also some other things that you should be aware of that might be construed as a board meeting under the law. So let's say a board member puts something on email and copies all the other board members. And it's something like, I'm really unhappy with how the landscaping's looking in front of our community. It's all dead and the flowers are dead. And it's the first thing people see when they see our sign to come into the community. I'm really upset about it. I think the landscaper is doing a horrible job. This is the email that's sent. Sends it to everybody on the board. Somebody replies back, reply all. Let's fire the landscaper. And then we get somebody, I agree, that landscaper is horrible. You don't know this, but you have just violated the open meeting law because a quorum of you are meeting by email discussing association business, and that is a violation of the open meeting law. So be really careful as you're using email as board members, because it's okay to exchange information like, here are the 3 tree trimming bids. Let's talk about these at the meeting. Or when can everybody meet for our March board meeting? Due to spring break, we can't have it at the normal time. When can everybody attend? That's kind of like a non-substantive discussion. But let's fire the landscaper. That is clearly going to be a violation of the open meeting law if you're having that discussion via email. Now, what are some ways around or workarounds or loopholes to get around the open meeting law? Less than a quorum of the board can discuss business. That is perfectly legal. If you have a 5-person board, 2 board members can discuss business without it being a violation of the open meeting law. Okay, let's talk a little bit about designated representatives. So we see this come up from time to time where we have an owner who can't attend the meeting or doesn't want to be the person that is making a comment at a board meeting. They want to send a representative on their behalf to speak about whatever their position is on the topic. So let's give an example. Let's say I'm an owner in the association and I want to send my realtor to the meeting to talk on my behalf to the board meeting. What I would need to do is Beth Mulcahy, make Susie Q, my realtor, my designated representative, and I just put that in writing. And this person is allowed to attend the board meeting on my behalf and, talk on my behalf. So if it's in writing and it's clear that the owner is designating a third party to be their designated agent, you have to, as a board, allow that person to speak at the whatever meeting it is, annual meeting, regular board meeting. That is the law. Now, this designated representative cannot vote, even if they have some sort of a power of attorney. It doesn't matter. The only person that can vote on association issues is going to be the owner. So that's kind of an important distinction. A couple of thoughts, on the designated agent. Find out when they submit it to you, find out, is there a length of time for this? Try to get them to narrow it down so that they don't just say, oh, this person is my designated agent forever. Because it'd be nice if you could just say, this is just my designated agent for this meeting. So try to get the owner to narrow that down if possible. One little practice pointer or tip that I'd like to give you is sometimes you'll have owners that attend the meeting, and that's great. That's always a good thing. Don't forget that it's a very smart and good idea for associations to have a homeowner forum at the beginning of the meeting. So before you even open the meeting, before you approve last month's meeting minutes, what I recommend is that you have a homeowner forum at this time. And what the homeowner forum does is it gives the owners maybe 1 or 2 minutes each to say the reason why they're there, or to talk to the board about something they're concerned about or that they're happy about. And maybe sometimes people come to the meeting and they don't have anything to say, so they may not choose to participate during the homeowner forum. But it's a really good way to give them an opportunity to be heard before the meeting starts, because once the meeting starts, then it's just the board talking and the homeowners are not allowed to contribute except before the board takes formal action on something. The law says that if an owner wants to contribute as the board is voting on something, typically what will happen is there's a motion, Like, let's say I vote to fire the landscaping company, and then there's a second, and then there should be discussion. And during the discussion period, if an owner wants to talk during this board member discussion period while the motion is on the floor, the association board has to allow that person to talk. So you could put a time limit on it, like 30 seconds or a minute, but that's the only appropriate time under the law that owners are legally allowed to talk during a board meeting. Now, every association is different. Sometimes with representing over 1,000 associations, I really have a very diverse group of clients. Some of my associations have hundreds of people who come to their regular board meetings, especially, in communities that have a high concentration of snowbirds. Maybe February, March, and April board meetings are really busy. And in those meetings, it may make sense to put some time limitations on how people can contribute either during the homeowner forum or actually during the board meeting when there's a vote being taken. The law does say that you can just have an equal number of people on each side contribute. So if you're in a really large setting like that, that might be a tip. Most of our clients, frankly, don't have anybody that comes to the board meetings. And so this isn't really a big issue, but it is something that you need to be aware of. If you do get high concentration of people coming, that you have these tips in your back pocket. Again, we have a great cheat sheet on this topic, which I think I've already shared with you on open meeting law and also on recording board meetings. Just a quick topic on recording board meetings. The legislature amended this law, 10 years ago, maybe more. And it says that owners, if they want to come and attend a board meeting and they want to audio or videotape the meeting, the board cannot prohibit that. If the board doesn't want owners videotaping or audio taping a meeting, the board can choose to do that. And so they have to bring the equipment to videotape or audio tape the meeting. And then it's the board's copy. And then if an owner wants to request a copy of it, the board can or has to provide a copy of that audio or videotape of the meeting. And really with Zoom now, it's so easy to record these meetings that a lot of our clients are just, as a matter of course, recording the meetings on Zoom. Okay, let's talk a little bit about executive sessions. So we talked about the regular session of the board, right? Where you have a quorum of the board present, you're discussing all the different topics that we talked about, like the manager's report, the president's report, the treasurer's report, approving last month's meeting minutes for the open board meeting. There are certain times where you can go into executive session, which is just the board and maybe a special guest like your manager or your attorney, but you can only go into executive session for a few topics. I'm going to go over just like the fast and easy rule to remember, and then we're going to go through kind of like the legal language of the statute. So the fast and easy rule would be, if you're going into executive session, the most common topics that you're going to talk about would be advice from your attorney, delinquencies, violations, and employee or independent contractor problems. So those are the most common executive session topics. So again, advice from your attorney, delinquencies, violations, employee or independent contractor problems, so to speak, or maybe compensation. And those are kind of the rule of thumb for executive sessions. Okay, so what is an executive session exactly? The board can close a portion of the meeting of the members and go into what we call executive session to talk about 5 topics. And this is kind of like the legalese that I said. So the 5 topics are legal advice from an attorney for the board or the association. B, pending or contemplated litigation. That would be like delinquencies, violations. So if you're thinking about filing a lawsuit on this or you're actually in a lawsuit. C would be personal health and financial information about an individual member of the association, an individual employee of the association, or an individual employee of a contractor for the association. We hardly ever see this, honestly. Maybe occasionally we'll have some personal information about an owner. Like maybe the owner is struggling and has dementia or Alzheimer's and some kind of crazy things are happening. And maybe this is a time that we talk about, hey, we've received complaints about this. How should we handle it? The next topic area for executive session would be subletter D, matters pertaining to the job performance of, compensation of, health records of, or specific complaints against an individual employee of the association or an individual employee of a contractor of the association who works under the direction of the association. And then the last topic would be anytime there's a discussion of a unit owner's appeal of a violation, that can be done or fine. That discussion can be done in the closed session, executive session, unless the owner wants it pulled to the open session, which they have the right to do. So again, executive session, it's actually really not that complicated. There aren't that many areas that you can go into. I mean, other topics you can go into for executive session. The main ones we see, again, just as a refresher, would be advice from your attorney, for the board or the association, delinquencies, violations, problems with contractors, or problems with employees. One little important tip that you need to hear from me is that prior to entering the executive session, the board is required to identify the sections just mentioned above, so the ones that we talked about, A through E, that authorize the board to close the meeting. This should either be on the agenda that, like at the end of this board meeting, we're going to go into executive session, and these are the topics under ARS 33-1801 and 33-1248 if you're a condo that we're going to be discussing, and then just list the sections. Just kind of as a practice pointer, I would just list all of them because you never know where the conversation in executive session is going to lead. And you may need to list A through E under those two statute numbers. So easiest way to comply with that requirement under the law, put that right on your agenda for your meeting that you're distributing with the notice that you're going to be going into executive session at the end of the meeting, and pursuant to ARS 33-1801 and 33-1248, we're going to be talking about all of the executive session topics listed in A through E. Okay, let's see. If you forget to put it on your agenda, you can always verbally announce it at the end of the regular open board meeting. But best practices would be put that on the notice of the meeting or on the agenda. Okay, what are some things to avoid in executive session? Getting off course, talking about a non-executive session topic during executive session. Don't do that. That's a violation of the law. Also, be careful that if you're going to hire or fire a vendor or an employee, that really needs to be done during the open portion of the meeting. Let's talk a little bit about emergency meetings for a minute here. What is an emergency meeting? An emergency meeting is something that you can't wait 48 hours to make a decision on. That's the bottom line. So a tree just fell on the common area pool and damaged the entire pool decking. We had a major fire in one of our units and it spread to 3 other units. We need to make an insurance claim pronto. Or with all this water that we've been having, the rain, maybe there's been a flood and we need to take remedial action immediately to rectify things so that there won't be any further damage. Or maybe the pool pump in 4th of July weekend breaks and we've got to spend $5,000 to get that fixed quickly so that people can enjoy the nice holiday weekend. Those are some examples of an emergency. Emergency meetings can be called to discuss only emergency matters. You can suspend the 48 hours notice, but you have to take meeting minutes at that emergency meeting. And then at the next meeting, immediately following the emergency meeting, at the next board meeting, immediately following the emergency meeting, you have to read into the record, what happened, why you had the emergency, what was decided, and then attach those minutes to your meeting minutes for that next meeting after the emergency meeting. You can have emergency meeting by email if it's so desperate that you need to make a decision quickly. And that is the only way that you can get as many board members as possible to contribute. Sometimes this happens in the summer months where people are traveling and we can't get everybody on a Zoom quickly. And that's perfectly legally proper. Remember, if you're ever in a real pickle and you don't know what to do and there's truly an emergency, reach out to your trusted advisors. Our law firm we work 12 months of the year, and I'm checking my email every day of the year, whether it's New Year's Day, Christmas Day, 4th of July, I'm available. So if there's a problem, you can always reach out to your trusted advisors, your attorney, and ask for quick advice. Your management company obviously is a wonderful resource for you. You should be reaching out to them, asking for their advice. Your insurance agent, get to know your insurance agent, because when you have a claim, if you don't want to get 1-800, you don't want them just to push you into this online 1-800 number where, you have an agent that doesn't even know you trying to manage your claim. Have a personal relationship with your attorney, by personal, I mean, get to know them. Invite them to a meeting, have an introductory call if you're the new president, with all of these key people that support your community. So your attorney, your insurance agent, your reserve company specialist, so that when there is a true emergency, you can pick up the phone and call them and they know who you are and they're able to help you quickly and in a more productive and quick manner. Let's see. Do you still have to notice the emergency board meeting? No, you certainly can. If you can pop something on the website quickly. Hey, we're having an emergency meeting. I know we're not having it 48 hours notice, but we are going to have it today. And here's where, and why we're having it. But you're not required under the law for emergency board meetings to have the notice posted 48 hours in advance. A couple things to remember: when to have executive session. Switching gears here a little bit, back to executive session for a minute, but it's smart to have executive session at the end of the meeting. I've been to meetings before, which this is just a horrible example of how to do something, but they'll be in the middle of an open board meeting, right? And then they'll say, well, we have our special guest here, and now we're going to just have everybody leave so that we can go into executive session with the attorney. And we just want everybody to get out and leave, sit in the hallway while we're having this meeting. That is for sure a way to upset owners. Don't do that. So either have your executive session before the meeting starts or after the meeting ends, so that you don't upset anybody by making them wait in the hallway or making them wait outside in the cold or dark outside if you're at a third party location. Okay, we've kind of talked about a lot of different things on the open board meetings. A couple things to think about would be using parliamentary procedure. I had a question last week from somebody where they said, hey, our documents require us to use Robert's Rules of Order. And I said to them, I'm so sorry to hear that, because that's kind of a nightmare for you. Robert's Rules of Order is like a 13-volume book on how to run meetings using parliamentary procedure and parliamentary control. And I mean, they use it for the annual meeting of Apple or the annual meeting of, large corporations. And it's not really meant to be used to a T in an HOA or condo setting. And so what I say about Robert's Rules of Order is, if you have that requirement in your documents, amend that out. You don't want that because there's no way you can set yourself up for success on that. It's impossible. I'm not a parliamentarian. I'm very familiar with Robert's Rules of Order, but I'm not even sure I could guide you into 13 volumes of how to handle your meetings in accordance with parliamentary procedure. It's impossible. So amend that out of your documents the next time you have an opportunity to do an amendment to your documents. But there are some good parts of Robert's Rules of Order that are really helpful. And, it can be, some of these tactics can be used if you're having some dysfunction in your board meetings. It's just a good resource. So what are some of the things that are parliamentary procedure that I think would be helpful for you? Would be stick to the agenda, right? Only discuss one subject at a time. Give each board member an opportunity to speak, and that's going to limit conflict between your board members. We don't want anyone feeling shut out of the process. Speak only on the issue being addressed. Don't go off diverting and talking about something else. This is not the time to do that. It's time to stick to the agenda at your board meetings. No shouting, screaming out of turn. Only speak when the chair addresses for you to speak. Ask questions and comments to the chair and decide issues between motions, seconds, and votes. Those are probably the most simple things from Robert's Rules of Order that you can take away from them as a suggested way to have efficient board meetings. Okay, what are some tips to keep the board meeting moving? The biggest complaint I get, and the thing that I hate most about serving on my board, is when I have to sit through a 3 or 4 hour board meeting. It's like torture, okay? And it's exhausting. You come out of those meetings and you're just like, oh my gosh, there's nothing I want to do but just go for a walk or have some wine, because it's just been a long haul in a board meeting. So what are some tips so that you don't have that? Because if you're having more than an hour and a half board meetings, I'm telling you right now, people are getting burned out and you're going to have turnover on your board. So what are some suggestions to have that 1 hour board meeting? So adhere to the agenda. Stick to those timelines that we put on the agenda. And who's the person that does that? The board president. The board president is the person that's the enforcer on that. If you're talking about a topic for 10 minutes on the agenda, and at the end of the 10 minutes, at 9 minutes, you can say, okay, let's wrap it up. We've only got 1 more minute to finish this. And if you can't wrap it up, then maybe you table it and put it on the agenda for next month's meeting. Or you quickly come to a decision after hearing all the different angles of it for the past 9 minutes. You quickly come to a decision on it and move forward. Board members need to be on time and prepared. Okay, so we don't want board members showing up 10 minutes late and everybody's waiting for them. Break the seal on the board packet. There's nothing more aggravating to me when I was president of my association where the manager would spend the time and effort to put together a great board packet, and I'd see board members walking into the meeting and they hadn't even opened it, right? And then we're approving different things in the meeting and they've got a ton of questions, the answers, all of which were in the board packet if they had taken the time to read it. Just a practice pointer would be encourage people to break the seal on the board packet. You don't have to spend half an hour on it. It's basically like a 10-minute spin the night before the meeting. Just go through it, get the lay of the land, and come ready to vote and on time to your board meetings. Keeping the meeting moving, another suggestion, remember that the board president is the team captain, and the team captain effectively starts the meeting and guides the meeting pursuant to the timed agenda. And if there's any fighting, basically the board president needs to be the mediator and tells people to please stop. If there's any sort of discord or maybe we've got a resident or an owner that is causing a lot of problems, interrupting the meeting, it's the board president's job to politely get everybody back on track. And in the case of a difficult owner that's causing a lot of problems in a meeting, it's very okay for the president to say to this person, okay, this is a warning. The behavior that you're engaging in, whether it's yelling, screaming, interrupting at inappropriate times, maybe getting physical, standing up, pointing fingers like this, it's not acceptable. And if you do it again, you'll be asked to leave. And then enforce it. If they do it again, we're asking you please now to leave. If they refuse to leave, you've got a couple options. You can call the police, which I'm going to tell you right now doesn't do much other than police will come out. They'll try to figure out what's going on. They probably won't do anything, but at least it will send a message to the owner that, hey, this type of behavior is not going to be tolerated. You could also just cancel the meeting if it's really bad, especially if the person's kind of going into, a dangerous behavior type thing. Just say that we're going to cancel the meeting for today and we'll reschedule it. And, we need to have better behavior at these meetings or we're going to have to move everything to Zoom, where there's, more safety for everybody in our community. Keep the discussion focused on association business. Another important thing to keep the meeting moving. I think we've said that now 3 times today. And the last and most important thing that we're going to talk about keeping the meeting moving is present an issue with solutions. There's never really anything more frustrating, in my opinion, than boards that just talk about an issue nonstop. It's like the loop, and they never, ever solve the problem. So if there's an issue, train your manager, train your law firm, train your insurance agent. We have an issue. What are the solutions? Bring the solutions to us so that the board can sit down and take a vote and make things happen in a positive and constructive way. Last thing we're going to talk about on board meetings, and then we're going to talk about annual meetings. Board meetings is going to be way more lengthy topic because it's something we do all the time, right? We have monthly board meetings. You may have quarterly board meetings. It's the one constant thing that you have in your community. And I want to spend a lot of time on it because I want it to go well for you and I want you to comply with the law. So let's talk just very briefly about virtual meetings. Post-pandemic, post the COVID-19 pandemic, I would say that probably 95% of our associations are conducting virtual board meetings. And this is just something that is happening. And we have a great cheat sheet that can help you if you're struggling with it at all, that we're going to be sharing with you. But it's very common. And frankly, I hardly ever go to board meetings in person anymore because the boards don't want to pay the travel time. And it's just a really efficient way to have your attorney pop in to a board meeting, right? And it's actually, boards are more likely to have me pop into a board meeting virtually than they ever would have been likely to have me pop into a meeting in person. So it's a good thing in that there's more access using Zoom or maybe even using a conference line or just using a cell phone with a speaker to have somebody come to your board meeting virtually. A couple things that I just want to mention about virtual meetings is announce the rules at the beginning of the meeting. So if you're having a homeowner forum, say, 1 minute for each homeowner, then when we get into the meeting, you're welcome as homeowners to put something in the chat. We'll have one person monitoring the chat so we make sure we don't miss anything. But it can be a little frustrating if you don't announce that at the beginning of the meeting because owners will be muted and they may feel like they're not being heard. So make sure you tell them if you want to say something during the meeting, put it in the chat. I'm really not in favor of disabling the chat. The only time I would say is if the chat's getting really nasty and people are not being professional and are making like personal attacks on the board or something like that, then you may need to disable the chat, except for before the board takes formal action on something. Because remember, under the law, owners should be allowed to contribute after the board makes a motion in a second and there's a discussion. If an owner wants to contribute, they should be able to contribute. But check out our cheat sheet on virtual meetings. We've got some great information in there for you that might be helpful if you're still struggling a little bit with the virtual meetings. But I would say most of our clients are using virtual meetings now, if not all the time, at least some of the time, to handle their regular board meetings and their annual meetings, frankly. Okay, let's talk real quickly about unanimous consent. There are some management companies out there that are encouraging boards to make decisions via unanimous consent emails. Our firm is not encouraging that. There's 2 administrative law judge cases in Arizona that say this is a direct violation of the open meeting law and it shouldn't be done. And so absent an emergency situation, we are not advising our clients to be using unanimous consent by email. I know that it's in the Nonprofit Corporation Act, and many of our clients are nonprofit corporations. However, the more specific law is the open meeting law. And the court was looking at this, and 2 judges have, administrative law judges, they said, hey, you cannot be making unanimous consent by email to get around making a decision at a regular board meeting. So don't do that, please, because it's going to get you into trouble. Again, you can use email for emergency meetings if needed. Okay, let's switch gears now and talk a little bit about annual meetings and how we can conduct successful annual meetings. Okay, so we talked about our regular board meetings, right? Now we're going to switch over and talk about annual meeting. This is your meeting that you have once a year. It's a meeting of the membership. And basically under Arizona law, you are required to have it once a year. A very common question I get is, what if we can't get a quorum? Well, if you can't get a quorum, my recommendation would be try again. Try a second attempt at having the annual meeting. If you can't get it after the second attempt, well, you tried. You have to wait till next year and try again. In the meantime, if you tried to have an annual meeting and you are unsuccessful after 2 tries, whoever's on the board stays on the board until the next annual meeting, unless they decide to resign or something. But new directors couldn't be elected because there wasn't a quorum for the annual meeting. So those members who are on the board now stay on the board. That's kind of a question I get often, so I want to make sure we talked about that. Okay. What's the procedure for the annual meeting? A couple things. Remember that you have to have a quorum at the annual meeting, right? And the best way to get the quorum is to send out the notice of meeting. And there's a requirement for how the notice is provided. You have to send out the notice not less than 10 days, nor more than 50 days in advance of the annual meeting. And that notice of the annual meeting needs to be sent via in person or via U.S. mail, snail mail. That's the requirement under the law. So most of our clients are doing U.S. mail, snail mail to send out their notice because they're too large to hand it individually in person to everybody. Once you send out that notice, you want to be really organized, obviously. One way to get there, let's just back up just a little bit, would be to plan out your annual meeting in advance, right? So back out the dates in the calendar. So let's say you know your annual meeting is June 1st. You should be sending out if you have a nominating committee or a solicit candidates type committee, they should be working on this in February and March. Maybe you don't have that. Maybe then the manager or the board sends out a letter to everybody saying, hey, we're looking for board members. We have 2 positions open. If you're interested, please fill out this form and return it to us. And so that's kind of the back out. So if our meeting's in June, we should be backing this out at least 3 months in advance. Then plan out the notice that we just talked about. So once you get the candidates' names, you're going to be sending out the notice of meeting. And like we said, not less than 10, not more than 50 days in advance of the meeting. And it's by either in-person delivery of the notice or by snail mail, U.S. mail is a requirement under the law. Then as you're getting closer to the annual meeting, keep reminding owners, hey, our annual meeting's in 2 weeks. Hey, our annual meeting's next week. Hey, our annual meeting's in 2 days. Hey, our annual meeting's tomorrow. Put up sandwich boards in your community. Have a social event. in conjunction with your annual meeting so that people will be more inclined to come. And make sure that you're keeping track of the ballots as they're coming in. Are we going to have a quorum? If we're short on ballots, we should be pumping out information. Hey, we need more people to return ballots because we don't look like we're going to have a quorum right now. Then when you get to the meeting, like let's say, okay, we think we're going to have a quorum and now we're going into the day of the meeting. So the day of the meeting, be really organized. Have all of those absentee mail-in ballots logged as already being received and counted. If you have a large number of votes to count, I like to walk into the annual meeting having already counted all of the absentee ballots. Have a really efficient registration systems. Have a troubleshooter from the board or the management company, or maybe your attorney, if your attorney's there at the entrance, and just say, okay, if you've already returned your mail-in ballot, you can just go right into the meeting to sit down. Or if you haven't done that, you need to go to the check-in desk and check in and get a ballot. If you have a very large association, you may need to have a couple different registration desks, like maybe A through L here, M through P here, P to Z here, whatever you decide to do, so that there can be 3 lines. Because what you don't want to have is a huge line and have the annual meeting start late. The annual meeting needs to start on time. Let's see. You want to have enough handouts at the annual meeting. That's a very common complaint that I hear, that people come to the annual meeting and maybe the financials are given out and the agenda, but there's not enough handouts for everybody. You want to make sure that you have enough handouts if you're having it in person. If you're having your annual meeting virtually, put the handouts in the chat, put them on the screen as people are talking so that people have access to them. Make sure that when you are conducting the meeting, that you just explain the protocol for the meeting. The protocol for today's annual meeting, announce it right at the beginning, is we're going to approve last year's annual meeting minutes. That is a procedure that you have to follow. You approve last year's annual meeting minutes, and then we're going to go into, maybe then we collect the ballots from the people who are present at the meeting. Or maybe you have the candidates give a quick statement about why they want to be a board member in the community, and then you collect the ballots. And then maybe there's a little side group that's off counting the ballots, and nobody should be running for the board counting the ballots, right? No spouse of somebody running to the board should be counting the ballots. Independent ballot tabulator should be, counting the ballots. And then during the time where they're tabulating it, the board should be going through their business. And basically, this is your chance as a board to shine. Have a PowerPoint. Talk about the successes this year. This is what we accomplished in 2024. These were some of our challenges. Looking forward, these are some things that we're going to be focusing on in 2025 and beyond. And have a time period to answer questions then. And make sure that you listen and are respectful to the owners as they're providing feedback, positive and negative, to you about how things are going in the association. So overall, this is just like the meeting of the members that's annual, and it's our opportunity to give the state of the association to the members. You need to take meeting minutes for the annual meeting, and then, like I said, those meeting minutes get approved at the next year's annual meeting minutes. Good to do those right away. I like to even do them that minute while somebody's in the meeting, doing them live, and then at the end of the meeting, they're done. These are all really positive suggestions. If you have anybody that's really upset about something, sometimes people come to the annual meeting and they're really upset. Encourage them to come to other board meetings, in the next year. Offer to have a sidebar with them after the meeting and talk through what they're so upset about. If they're upset that the management company isn't returning their phone call, which I'm at a lot of annual meetings, and that's something I hear often, make sure that you provide that feedback to the management company and make sure that we apologize to the owner for not being timely, even though it's not the board made the mistake. Hey, I'm really sorry that is happening. We are going to check into that and make sure that doesn't happen again. Thank you for providing us with the feedback so that we can do a better job. So those are just our suggestions for the annual meeting. What are some tips to get more people to attend the annual meeting? Because if you have the problem getting the quorum, you can't elect your directors, right? So announce the annual meeting in as many places as possible, on your website, on sandwich boards at the entrance. Send out email reminders. Put it on your social media. Plan and publicize a social event before the meeting to include food, or after the meeting with food and a social event for your community. Give away door prizes or have a raffle. Get your vendors to donate items for this so that, hey, if you return your mail-in or absentee ballot, your name will get thrown in a hat for a $500 gift card to Cheesecake Factory or $500 Visa gift card, something like that. Give away awards for best lawn, best decorations, best flowers to encourage pride of ownership and to, reward people for having great maintenance and a beautiful home. Establish a program through the annual meeting. Like think about having a common area improvement committee or a budget committee or a crime-free community or block watch. Have a guest speaker come, invite the mayor, invite city council members, invite your attorney as a draw to get people to come. Aggressively pursue mail-in or absentee ballots. So if you know your association always has difficulty getting a quorum at the annual meeting, you've got to be strategic on how you pursue getting ballots. The meeting notice and the absentee ballot are sent out, let's say on 40 days before the annual meeting. Every week, you should be checking in. Okay, we've got 20% back. Okay, we've got 40% back. And maybe you need 50% to have a quorum. I don't know. It's in your bylaws. Every association has a different quorum. The last 2 weeks, you need to be really hyper-focused on getting the word out about the importance of returning the ballots, contacting the people that haven't returned the ballots, and just having as many touches as possible with the people who haven't returned it, so that they understand how important it is to return it. And they may have lost it, right? It may be in their pile of bills. So what you may need to do is you may need to resend it to them again, multiple times so that they have it handy right then and there. Also, a lot of our clients are doing virtual voting now or online voting rather. And that is a great way to get people to vote. I would say, maybe 10% of our clients have converted to doing all voting by email, which is allowed for by Arizona law. And that would be a way to increase attendance because it's just so handy. You just send them an email, they click the button and they vote. And it just helps get that quorum because we'll get those ballots back. And remember to always acknowledge and thank all the volunteer work association members that have contributed. Maybe you give them a certificate for appreciation, or maybe you give them a small, monetary gift card or Starbucks or Panera, just as a thank you for everything that they're doing. Because remember, your succession planning is getting those volunteers to help you. They might be board members again in the future. And by treating them nicely as volunteers, they're more likely to move into a board role in the future. And that gives you a way out. Also, don't forget to verbally acknowledge them at the board meeting, maybe at the annual meeting, maybe even have them stand up and do, like applause at the meeting for the people that have contributed to the community over the past year. Really, don't forget that this is, how can you shine at your annual meeting? We've talked about a lot of different strategies, setting the meeting up well, in advance, following the law, having a good strategy for check-in so it's very efficient and the meeting can start on time. Making sure we have a quorum by sending out ballots and reminding people how important it is to vote, making it a fun event for the annual meeting, thanking our volunteers, giving away awards so that people feel that they're being recognized for keeping their home so nice. I think these are all different strategies that we've given you so that you can not only comply with the law at your annual meeting, but you can also shine and really show what a great job you're doing in your capacity as a volunteer board member for your community. Okay, we covered a lot today. We covered the new legislation, right? We covered how to have a successful regular board meeting, and then we covered how to have an awesome annual meeting of your membership. Now we're going to go into questions. It looks like I'm a little bit over. Sorry about that. I was about an hour and 5 minutes today. And we're going to go into questions. We have 26 questions right now, which is amazing. Okay, question number 1. The association's bylaws afford its board customary powers for the administration of association affairs. The board adopted a format for all association meeting minutes consistent with the criteria framed on the Mulcahy website, how to take perfectly proper meeting minutes. Okay, good. That's in our board member cheat sheet if anybody wants to see that. The board secretary later produces an extensive verbatim transcript of an association meeting and refuses to conform it to the established format for meeting minutes, arguing that only association members can approve the format and content. What is the board of directors' authority and best course of action in this situation? Okay, the board secretary doesn't get it. The board secretary should be creating the minutes and they should be a page. And we should not be doing a transcript like that. It's not advisable, it's not customary, and it's going to be very confusing to the owner. So What I would recommend is talk to the board secretary, give her a copy of my cheat sheet, board meeting cheat sheet. On the flip side, it has how to take perfectly proper meeting minutes. If the secretary refuses to comply, go to your bylaws. You should be able to remove the secretary by a vote of the board from that person's position as a secretary. They'll still be a director at large, but the secretary needs, it's the most important role of the secretary is taking meeting minutes. And so, or overseeing the taking of the meeting minutes. So if they're not willing to comply with, what's required under the law, they need to be removed as the secretary. Okay, number 2, our board unanimously passed the replacement of our pool fence at the end of 2023. Can the new treasurer in 2024 prevent or delay its installation? The board has been waiting since December for the deposit to be mailed to the fence company, only to find out that the treasurer put a stop to it. Okay, I hate to say this, but this is like the same analysis as the last one. This is totally ultra-virus act by the treasurer. This was passed by the board, majority of the board. The treasurer needs to stop doing this and needs to comply with the wishes of the board. And if they don't, I would recommend that you give the treasurer a warning. The treasurer doesn't comply and allow the bills of the association to be paid. Look at your bylaws, but the treasurer can be removed typically from an officer position by the board, a majority vote of the board. The treasurer will no longer be the treasurer, but will be a director at large after that, and that's fine, and appoint somebody else to be the treasurer. Okay, next question, number 3. Can spouses both serve on the HOA board at the same time? I guess the underlying question is, why would spouses want to serve on the board at the same time? Okay, I get why. Because there's usually not enough people to run, right? Or nobody's willing to run. And then you say, oh, my husband will come. He'll be our quorum. Okay, so best practices is don't do this because it shifts the balance of power on a board. It probably can be done unless there's a prohibition in your documents. So usually it says that the only qualification to be on the board is to be an owner of record. And if both spouses are owners of record of one lot, technically they both qualify to be a board member. But it's just not advisable because I said the balance of power. Let's say you have a 3-person board and 2 of the 3 are spouses. That's a really dangerous situation because, the spouses could be talking about anything at home and they could be making decisions regarding the association. It's just all around a bad situation. I have never seen it work out. So can they? Probably yes. I'd have to look at your documents. Unless there's a prohibition in the documents, they probably can. But is it best practices to do it? Absolutely not. And I do not advise it. Okay, question number 4. The current board passed a new landscape design guideline to plant a specific number of plants and trees. The new guideline is being applied retroactively with homeowners with well-maintained yards, but no trees receiving violations to plant. The original CC&Rs did not require a specific number of plants and trees. Is this legal to apply retroactively? I don't know. Probably not. Okay. And like the design, I have to look at the documents, but is it equitable even to make people go and, plant trees like this? And I don't know. There's probably some history on this. Maybe there were trees on these people's lots and they maybe died due to weather or something. I don't know. But I think anytime that you're trying to force somebody to do something on their property and it's not in the CC&Rs, I think you're really going to have some trouble with that. So something doesn't sound right on that. And I think, you could voluntarily require people to do it if they want. If they want to, you could say, this is what we want going forward. Or if they're redoing their landscaping, this is what we need going forward. But making people retroactively go back and change their landscaping design to, make them plant a certain number of trees that wasn't originally required in the CC&Rs, I think that's overreach. Okay, question 5. We are a small community and there is a large need for repairs in our older complex, including repaving a parking lot, filling off our grass, to switch to gravel and update landscaping, change our wood fencing to bricks to avoid continuing replacement of wood fencing, and more. Is it possible for HOAs to seek grants to help with major projects and reduce stress on current funds? Really good question. Yes. Go to the city that you are currently, your association is located in, and talk to their neighborhood services department. Most cities have a grant program for a lot of the things that you're discussing here. So I hope that you'll do that. Typically, the grant program resets July 1 because their fiscal year is different than HOAs. So now's a really good time. I mean, you could be the first person in line in July to get grant money. So now's a great time for you to be reaching out to them, finding out more about their grant process. Okay, question number 6. Is there not documentation for ARC committee and or the board approval in members' file? How should the new ARC board handle the situation? Is there a time limitation for the new ARC or board for correcting the situation? Okay, so let's say that so I'm hearing is that there's not a lot of paperwork that's showing prior actions by, the board or the ARC on a member's file. How do we handle the situation? I think you got to look at it on a case-by-case basis because I'm not sure exactly what you're doing. Are you trying to find out if they have approval for something after the fact and there's nothing in the file? I don't know how to answer this question. Is there a timeline? I mean, I guess what I would say is if a violation has existed for more than 3 years, you're probably waived from enforcing it, would be my short answer. And it just underlies the importance of the board and the architectural committee having really good records to show if something's approved or disapproved by an owner architecturally. Question 7, does the state of Arizona require the owner to be able to cast ballots at the annual meeting? What statute number? Great, my office is amazing. They already got the statute number in there for me. Thank you. ARS 33-1812, if you're a planned community, is going to be the one that you're going to want to look at. Basically, it says that owners should be allowed to cast a ballot by absentee ballot or in person at a meeting of the members. Now, remember, that's only for decisions that are made at a meeting of the members, like, your annual meeting, this would apply to, or a removal of board members meeting, maybe a meeting to vote on a special assessment. That would be the examples where, you would be required, the board would be required to have an owner either be able to cast a ballot electronically or in person or by mail or in person. You have to have that in-person element under the law. Okay, question number 8. It looks like we're up to 30 questions now. We have a community Facebook page. If discussion occurs on any community item and board members like the item, or if there's any discussion on the Facebook page, does that constitute action or a quorum? I would say it's really hard for me because I don't know, is there a quorum of board discussing it on the Facebook page under the comments? Here's what I would say as a better point. The board should not be liking things. The board should not be commenting on things. I mean, maybe the board posts a subject like, oh, we've got our garage sale this weekend. Or if somebody has a question where do we find the meeting minutes? The board could say, oh, they're on our website. Click on the meeting minutes tab on our website. But the board shouldn't be going back and forth with owners in any way on any sort of social media. And, there shouldn't be any fighting. There shouldn't be none of that. When you're on your board, you are perceived as talking on behalf of the board. So you have to be really careful commenting in public forums like this. When you're walking your dog, somebody comes up to you. This actually happened to me with our association where I was out walking a new baby and somebody asked me to come look at their paint color that they'd painted on the side of their house. And I looked at it and they asked me if I thought it was pretty. And I said, yeah, it's nice. And they walked away from that conversation thinking that me as a board member had just approved their paint color. And I walked away from that thinking, did I just get schnookered? Like this is not what I wanted to have happen here. So after that, I just made a decision. I don't talk about board business when I'm out walking or running or whatever. I just say, come to the board meeting. And that's the best thing that you can do. Question 9, if the board has a training session or receives reports from staff regarding maintenance issues, is an open meeting required? Yes, it is. So anytime a quorum of the board is meeting to discuss any sort of association business, whether there's votes being taken or not, it is an open meeting. And you need to follow the open meeting law. Question 10, does a discussion about firing a vendor have to be in the open meeting? Or can it be in the executive meeting? What about libel issues? So as I said previously, you can discuss job performance of a vendor during the executive session, and I would recommend that you do that. It's going to be slander because it'd be spoken if you're talking about a vendor and if somebody's trying to say that you said something false or defamatory about them. Just stick to the facts. This vendor was supposed to come out and trim the trees on Tuesday and they never showed, or, they only trimmed at 10 feet. They should have trimmed at 12 feet. I don't think you have to worry too much about defamation as long as you're telling the truth. But the short answer would be, you should be talking about vendor issues, performance issues in the executive session, in my opinion, and you are allowed to do that under the law. Okay, question 11. I have found that board training is instrumental in guiding general policy. In our case, board training is conducted by our attorney. So the board meets as a quorum and uses legal advice to close the meeting and go into executive session. Is board training the correct use of legal advice to exclude members? Clearly, our board is adopting a policy based upon what they learn in these private closed training sessions. I'm okay with that because you're talking to your attorney. That's something that's a protected area under the executive meeting laws. And, I don't think that your board is doing anything that's illegal. They're allowed to do that under the law. Question 12, regarding representation. Should there be a verbal consent with the owner acknowledging the other representation in addition to the written notice? There are people who will write their own letter and will sign the owner's name. Okay, so regarding representation. Okay, so you're talking about the appointing the designated agent, is my understanding of this question. So do you have to have verbal consent from the owner in addition to the written notice? No, the statute just says that the owner signs something saying, I, Beth Mulcahy, give Johnny Appleseed, I make him my designated agent to talk for me on behalf of me at the board meeting. And that's that. I don't think we can add the verbal consent to it. If you think that they are falsely signing something, if you think the designated representative is forging something, you could send that to the owner and say, we're just asking for confirmation that this is, in fact, you agree with this. Question 13, my HOA board holds general meetings every 1 to 2 years. Hence, approving the minutes and financials are done every couple of years. Annual meetings are held yearly. This is a community of less than 200 units. In the meantime, policies, amendments occur, and homeowners are made aware of these changes by mail. Subsequent meetings are always to be determined. Is this a new practice for the industry? So I guess this is not kind of similar to what my experience is. I don't know, maybe some associations like in Northern Arizona don't meet as frequently because it's more like vacation homes. But my feeling is that most associations are meeting much more frequently than this. So the practice that you're describing here is not consistent with, the norm in our industry by any means. And really, you've got to review those financials more often so that you make sure that there's not any fraud, theft, or embezzlement going on in your association. Okay, question 14. If 2 board members are having a discussion about the HOA, does that constitute a board meeting? Or is that why there needs to be a quorum to be a board meeting? Is it still an official board meeting if there is a quorum, but the community manager isn't present? Okay, all good questions. So it depends on how many board members you have in your community. Okay, so if you have a 3-person board, if 2 board members are having a discussion, that's a quorum and you're having a board meeting, right? If it's a 5-person board and 2 board members are meeting and having a discussion, it's not a board meeting because it's not a quorum. Do you have to have a community manager present to have a quorum at a board meeting? No, it's all about the board members. So if you have board members, 4 to 5, 3 out of 5 is a quorum, okay? Doesn't matter if the manager is there or not. Question number 15, does the presence of a designated representative count towards meeting the quorum needed to hold the meeting? No, it does not. So we're going back to this designated representative thing, which is interesting. We're getting a lot of questions on that. Like I said in my presentation earlier, the designated representative cannot vote at the annual meeting. They don't count towards quorum. I'll add that here. And even if they have some sort of a power of attorney, it still doesn't count towards a quorum and they still are not allowed to vote. Question 16, can an architectural appeal be made in an executive session? Our CC&Rs say all ARC approval or disapproval are final. There is no violation involved. Let's see. It depends on how that appeal is being handled. So if we go back and look at the sections in the executive session under 33-1801 and 33-1248, It could fall under, let's see, appeal. So it could be under subsection E, and discussion of a unit owner's appeal of any violation cited or penalty imposed. So, I mean, technically an ARC appeal isn't going to be a violation or in violation or penalty yet. So probably that needs to be done in the open session would be my take on it. If, let's say, sometimes what happens on these architectural things is somebody changes their windows, right? And they're in violation. And then they go back after the fact and then submit an architectural, in that case, then you could do it in executive session because there's an underlying violation. But generally speaking, the way you worded this question, no, an ARC appeal shouldn't be done in executive session if there's no underlying violation. And you put in there no violation involved. So that answers the question right there. This needs to be done in the open session. Okay, question number 17. City of Phoenix has a law that says it is unlawful for any person to obstruct any public street or alley or sidewalk. Some of our owners park on their driveway where the back end of the car is on the sidewalk. Are these homeowners in violation? Whose responsibility is it to enforce that law? City of Phoenix or our HOA? Probably the City of Phoenix would be, if you're trying to cite that law, you should contact the police and see if they'll do anything, or maybe even neighborhood services or code enforcement. If your HOA has something similar in the CC&Rs or the rules for your association, the association can enforce it. Question 18, am I understanding that the executive meeting will reference firing of staff that needs to be announced at the board meeting? There have been a rash of firings that are quick, an hour notice to the person being fired, and the community never has heard anything in advance and is not able to get information after the firing. Okay, so this deals with how to, associations that might be firing staff, like let's say you have employees of your association. And I guess here's what I would say as a business owner myself, and because I serve on a board, sometimes you have information internally, maybe the other residents don't know about. And like maybe somebody's falsifying their time card, or maybe they're stealing money, or maybe they're not showing up to work or whatever. And that may result in the board firing somebody, without a lot of notice. That's what you've hired. Basically, I mean, that's what you've elected these people to do. That's their responsibility. And some of this stuff can't be made public. Sounds like you want more information on that. I'm sorry, you probably can't have it. If you want to be more involved in the association, the way to do that would be to run for the board so that then you're in on the scoop on all of that. Question 19, our board has asked the board members to sign a code of ethics form. Should this be approved by the attorneys first, and is it legally required? So I like the idea of a code of conduct or code of ethics for a board that's dysfunctional and that's not functioning very well, has a lot of problems, confidentiality, maybe they don't get along. I think that's a very good idea. I do think your attorney should look at it just to make sure everything's okay and in compliance with the law. Is it legally required? No. But if a majority of the board adopts it, everybody's subject to it. Okay, question 20. Our board is meeting, all 3 members, for multiple sessions to discuss, interview, or choose a new community management company. Are we violating any laws? Okay, so it looks like you have a quorum of the board meeting to discuss, hiring a new management company. So you really should be doing it in an open board meeting. So if you're not doing that in an open board meeting and it's a quorum, you probably are violating the open meeting law. Move that to the open session meeting to be in full compliance with the law. Next question, 21. How do we handle homeowner complaint about disturbing noise from their neighbor that keeps them awake at night? There's no reference to quiet hours in any of our documents. Tucson City Noise Ordinance prohibits loud noise between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. The homeowner wants the board to solve the problem. The management company did send the neighbor a letter of complaint, but the problem is still persisting. What are the next steps? I mean, I don't know what exactly the noise is. Are they like jackhammering in their backyard, using a blowtorch? Is their dog barking? Are the kids having a wild party in the pool? I don't know exactly. First line of defense really should be that you contact the police for, noise situations. So that would be one recommendation. In terms of the board, there probably is something in your documents that requires, that owners not create a nuisance. So the board should continue sending letters to the owner maybe even invite them to a meeting to talk about the issue. But ultimately, the police are going to be the ones that are going to help you solve this problem the fastest. So I would encourage you to encourage the owners to contact the police. Okay, next question, number 22. We reported an active roof leak 170 days ago. CC&R has determined the HOA is responsible for roof repair. HOA has delayed the repairs, and 2 weeks ago, we got mold results stating we have multiple deadly toxic molds in our only bathroom from the roof leak. We won't have a bathroom for 8 to 10 days or 8 to 12 days during the repair. Would the HOA be responsible for alternative housing since the roof leak repair requires us to be out of the home? Yes, likely they will, and you'll just need to work with them to get that resolved. Question 23. Our HOA uses the personal information exception to talk about possible CC&R violations in a closed meeting. For example, they meet several times in a closed meeting to identify the homes that they thought needed to be painted. Now that I am a board member, I have seen the minutes and I can see that a lot was discussed in executive session and there was nothing about any particular homeowner's health or financial information. Was this an appropriate use of the personal information exception to open meetings? Honestly, I think it falls under CC&R violations. I think it falls under a different section under the executive session exceptions. It falls probably under contemplated litigation. Under 33-1801 or 33-1248 fell under that. So I don't really have an issue. I do not think it falls under personal information. So that's a quick answer to your question, but I think it falls under another one. So I wouldn't probably, go nutty on that because I think they did do it right. Just the wrong exception, but they had the right to be in executive session. Question 24, can an annual meeting be conducted virtually? Yes, absolutely. The only thing that I will say about it, we talked a little bit about this when I was talking about annual meetings, is announce the procedure for the meeting at the beginning of the virtual meeting for the annual meeting. So like if the homeowner forum is going to be conducted at the beginning, make sure that people are allowed to talk then. And then if you're closing it during the annual meeting, let them know, hey, if you want to make a comment, you can do it to the chat function. And we have one board member that's reviewing the chat function and we'll bring that, those comments to the forefront. Another thing is if people want to vote in person at a virtual meeting, the way we've done it before is to comply with the law is we either have them text their ballot to the manager or the attorney or a board member so that it can be included in the count. Okay, question 25. Are HOAs required to have a board? So the short answer would be yes. One of our members hired a property management company to manage our payments. We have 5 members only in our community. They got a quorum due to 2 members not being eligible to vote due to late payments. This management company is calling themselves our board of directors. Shouldn't the owners be on the board of directors? I mean, I'd have to look at your bylaws, but generally speaking, yes, you should have owners running your board. Maybe you have a provision in your bylaws that allows non-owners to run the board. In that case, then I suppose the management company could appoint themselves as the board, although not advisable. I guess the thing that I would be thinking about is this is your investment and you want to make sure that, somebody who has an interest in the investment is operating as the board. So I would not be in favor of delegating this to the management company. I think you should have actual board members be owners. Number 26, I think you commented that decisions to hire and fire vendors must be done in an open session. Did I understand that correctly? Yes, I did say that. And if so, how do you handle performance reasons for dismissing a vendor that perhaps should remain confidential? I would just talk about those during the executive session. And I would, say that we discussed extensively. There were some performance issues. And for these reasons, which we're not going to go into, in the open session, the vendor has been terminated or will be terminated by a vote. So I'm asking for a motion to terminate ABC Landscaping Company in second, and then maybe some short discussion and then vote and it's over. It's in the open meeting. You can talk about the nitty gritty of the problems with the vendor in the executive session. You have the right to do that. You also have the right to do that in the open session. But most of the time, boards are doing this in the executive session. And then to actually fire them, you do that in the open session, or to hire them, that's in the open session because it doesn't fall under the categories of the closed session, executive session. So you got to do that in the open session. Okay, question 27. We have a small community of 36 condos. Rarely do members attend any meeting. Is a quorum for an annual meeting determined by the number of ballots received? Okay, so you have 36 units, your condo. People aren't attending the meeting. That could be a good thing, because usually when people are happy, they're not attending, they're not making a big fuss. Is the quorum of the annual meeting determined by the number of ballots received? Yes. And you've got to look at your bylaws to determine what your quorum amount is. Okay, question 28. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more questions, and then we're finished. I'm a community manager for multiple boards. I have seen discussing items over emails to be a growing trend. I know in your presentation you discussed unanimous consent over email. Can you talk about discussing items over email as well? I did spend a little bit of time on this today, but I'm going to just kind of close the loop on this just to answer this question. So your board should not be discussing business via email. Okay. It is contrary to the open meeting law. So the example I gave earlier was if a quorum of the board is communicating by email, via reply all, and making decisions and discussing things, you're violating the open meeting law. Do not do that. The purpose of the open meeting law is to have discussion and votes at the open board meeting or an executive session. And if you are making votes by email and it's not an emergency circumstance, you are violating the open meeting law. It will catch up with you. Okay, so please be careful and don't do that. Question 29, what would you do about a board that has created a clique where they ignore willing volunteers for committees, but gaslight everyone by asking for volunteers and only choose volunteers that are members of their clique? What would I do about that board? Well, that's unfortunate, because really the reason why we get on the board is to help the community, and we don't get on it to be in a social clique or whatever. So it's disappointing to hear that. I would try to get a seat on the board. I were you. I mean, I've been odd man out, odd female out, whatever, on my board at different times. And, it's hard when you're not on the board and they're making decisions that are poor decisions. It's hard to see that because it's just painful. So the best way to handle that is to put your objections in writing and forward it to the board, and then run for the board yourself and try to make positive change from the inside. That's what I did. And I think it's worked. It's exhausting, but it does work. You just have to keep moving forward. Don't get involved in all the petty stuff. Get on the board and be professional. Next question, number 30 out of 35. The previous board chair had called 3 emergency meetings with no further information except to say it was personal to a homeowner. Should this information be in the minutes, and how would it be accessed by other HOA members? So I don't know what personal, I don't know how that would be categorized as an emergency meeting, but it just seems odd that you'd have 3. Maybe you'd have 1 if there was something really horrible that happened. Couldn't wait 48 hours to talk about it. So I guess, should this information be in the minutes? Yes, there should be emergency meeting minutes. So you could request to see those minutes. They may say it's an emergency executive session. And then you should say, well, what topic, was it in there? And they're going to say personal, right? And you're going to say, can I have more information? How do you define personal? They probably won't give it to you, but I will say this doesn't smell right to me. So I think if you're looking at this and thinking, this doesn't sound right, I agree with you. Okay, question 31. Our board president has created a Facebook page with our community page, but only approves certain community members to be a part of it. I'm seeing so many questions about boards behaving in a petty manner. Maybe that's a good topic for a class, right? I think maybe that's something we might need a refresher on, how that's so destructive and horrible for communities. Okay, but I digress. So you've got the board president running a Facebook page, not allowing certain members to be a part of it that are part of your community. This board president has also created a bunch of group chats with groups of 18 to 20 out of the 150 homes. Is this a violation of the open meeting laws? Based upon what you're telling me, I don't think so, because you haven't told me that there are board members on this and that they're discussing association business. So I'd say no, based upon what you've told me. Okay, 4 more questions. Our HOA number 32, our HOA management company says if we don't approve the assessment, we may end up in a receivership. What does that mean? Okay, really good question. That means things are really serious right now in your community. You don't have enough money to pay your bills. And so apparently there's an assessment vote that's going around your community right now. And if that is not approved, a likely outcome will be we won't have enough money to pay our bills for the community. And if that happens, somebody will petition the court to have a receiver appointed to run the business affairs of the association. And the first thing that the receiver will do after it's appointed is likely ask the court for special assessment, of the members to meet the expenses of the association, including the receivership fee. So, this is serious. What does this mean? It means somebody else is going to make decisions for your community and just start dictating this is how much is owed and you need to pay it without any vote of the membership. So I think now's the time to roll up your sleeves and help out in your community and get involved, because it sounds like things aren't going well. And maybe this assessment really is needed to meet the expenses, and you should vote yes. And maybe you should be helping the board get the yes vote out, because if you don't, it's going to end up costing you a lot more money and you're losing control of probably the biggest asset that you have. Last three questions. The HOA number 33. The HOA held an emergency meeting for an issue in the community and provided notice that an emergency meeting was being held. The emergency meeting was about a year ago, and the minutes from that meeting have not been posted to date. Is this in violation of the open records law? If so, what is the appropriate course of action for the community members? I think what I would do is just ask for a copy of them. They don't have to post them anywhere. They're not required to do that. Ask them, hey, can I have a copy of those meeting minutes? And tell them, like under Arizona law, you're required to take those meeting minutes and see what they say. You also could ask for the meeting minutes for the meeting directly after the emergency meeting, because they should have read into the record more information at that board meeting directly after the emergency meeting. They should have read into the record the purpose, why it was called, what they discussed, and what happened at the emergency meeting. If they didn't do either of those, then you just let them know, like, hey, you need to go back and do that because you're in violation of the law. Okay, last two questions. If an outgoing board member does not have records backing up ARC and board decisions under their term that violates current association's documents, what action can the new board take to correct the violations? Okay, so you have a situation where you don't have good record keeping, right? And you don't have minutes, you don't have architectural approvals, and we've got some violations. So this is a really sticky wicket for the new board. I think you probably need to get your attorney involved to get some advice. And if you don't have the documentation on it, it's going to be really difficult to enforce some of these things. So talk with your attorney about it. Our firm's here, ready, willing, and able to help you if you want to reach out to us to talk about it. Last question for this morning. If an HOA has a 5 board member capacity, but presently there are only 3 active board members, what makes up a quorum? So you're supposed to, I'm guessing that 5 board member capacity means that you're supposed to have 5 board members, right? But you only have 3. So a quorum is 3, and you need all 3 of you to be at every meeting in order to conduct business. If you're in this situation, what I recommend is that you might also want to start putting out communications to the membership saying, hey, we've got 2 vacancies on the board. Please consider joining our board. Okay, that's it for today. Just some concluding remarks. We had a really great turnout of people here today, 110 plus just live here right now. I'm not sure what the total was, but I think we were in the at least 120s, 130s today of people here today wanting to learn more to help their associations. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. Do not forget that, we had 150, I just heard. Wowza. That's like pandemic levels. So great that we had so many people here today. Thanks for being here. Our next class is going to be our live virtual First Friday event. And that is always the first Friday of every month. In March, it's coming up like lightning fast. Okay. It's the first day of the month is March 1st. And it happens to be a First Friday. So on March 1st, at 9 a.m., we are going to be having our virtual First Friday event. And what that means is you can go to our website, sign up for it, submit a question, and join us on virtually to hear me answer a whole bunch of questions on a lot of different topics. So hope you'll join us for that. Usually it's from about 9 to 10:30. We always get a great turnout for that. Our next class in March is our class number 3 of our 2024 Virtual HOA Condo Academy, and that's going to be 2 days after St. Patrick's Day, which is one of my favorite holidays of the year, on March 19th at 11 a.m. And this is a really important class. We're going to be talking about how to turn challenges in your community into triumphs. We're going to give you some strategic solutions and suggestions for HOA and condo woes. So the big things. How do we turn things around when things are not going well in an association? Some examples would be aging infrastructure, not enough money, budget planning, what to do if you have fraud or embezzlement, just really the big issues that keep board members up at night. And how do we turn it around so that things can, move in a more positive direction? We're going to be telling a lot of stories about problems that we've seen in associations and how they've successfully overcome it. It's going to be a great class. So I hope that you will join us for that class. That's it for today. Please consider leaving our firm a Google review. We're going to be sharing a chat on how to leave a review here shortly. We're always happy to get feedback from our valued customers, clients, and anybody who's participating in these classes so we can continue to provide quality education programming and to improve our service. It's also really important that I'm able to provide the feedback to the neighborhood services departments who are sponsoring these classes so that they see that these classes are valuable and that you like them and you want more. Because, of course, they're always evaluating, are these classes successful and are they providing value to homeowners and board members and managers? So please help us out by doing that, leaving us a Google review on the link that we're providing. Thanks, everybody, for being here today, and hope you have a great rest of the week and look forward to seeing you at future virtual classes, next one being on March 1st. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Don't forget, our free cheat sheets are available for download at mulcahylawfirm.com.
The intent of our Zoom, Facebook Live, First Friday free call-in, videos, and podcast is to provide a forum for board members and community managers to receive answers to HOA and condo legal questions. Please note, the content in these sessions are general in nature and is not intended to and should not be relied upon or construed as legal opinion or legal advice regarding any specific issue or factual circumstance. You should directly consult with an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation.